We're joined now by the spokesman of the Citizens for Good Governance, Ben Ukeji. Thank you for joining us on Newsnight tonight.
Thank you.
Well, it does seem that you're echoing what the Minister of Education, Tunji Alausa, has said, that Nigeria must improve current varsities instead of adding more.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the government should do. And there should be no need of creating additional universities. We rise to object to that proposal, but the lawmakers, precisely the House of Representatives, I think in a representative democracy, our lawmakers, our representatives of the National Assembly ought to know that they are representing people. So it is the interest of the people that they should care for, not their personal interest. What is the interest of creating an additional university where you have not funded the existing ones that you have on ground? Since 2009, the government signed an agreement for the release of 220 billion naira annually to us, to revamp decaying infrastructures at the citadels of learning, that is at the universities campuses. Since 2009, that agreement has not been kept. It was only in 2014 and President Jonathan thereabout released some funds, for need assessment projects across the universities. Why not keep to that agreement? Why not implement that agreement to a logical end? To avoid this industrial action, constant, persistent strikes in the campuses, that distorts academic calendar.
Well,
so why should the lawmakers even talk about creating new universities?
You do have a valid point, but there are those who have also brought up arguments such as you shouldn't blame government inefficiency and government's inability to keep to their promises, signed promises, to exclude young Nigerians from gaining access to university. And this is their argument, that countries like Indonesia and Brazil, which have populations such as us, have more universities than we currently do. So why not expand and at the same time be efficient to accommodate more Nigerians?
Yes,
that's the argument.
Fine. When you have solved the problem that you have on ground, when you have fully funded the existing universities, to a minimal level, then you can talk about expansion. But you cannot begin to expand when you have not even catered, sufficiently, adequately for the existing ones. So that's the point where I'm making here. It's not about, creating jobs, for the boys. It's not about constituency projects. They are looking at it as if it's a constituency project, that every lawmaker wants a university to be allocated to his community, so that he will go home and tell the community that I brought this university.
Are you saying the lawmakers are putting pressure on the need for private universities?
Yes, they are, because they came up with that proposal. And David Easton's systems theory,
right,
that talks about the system works as a structured system. Now, when you look at the legislative arm of government, it is the same, they have to work together, even though there's separation of power with the executive. They make the law. And some of these public universities or institutions are actually created by the lawmakers. So if they go ahead and make the laws for the creation of this additional 200 universities, that will suffice. And that is why we are objecting to, that they should see the need why they should not go ahead with such a wide elephant project, but rather implement the agreement that you have with ASU, so that the university education system, public university education in Nigeria can be functional.
One of the demands of ASU, let me just jump in again here, sorry, is the full autonomy for Nigerian universities. You're asking for that on one hand, and on the other hand, you're asking for funding, of these universities. Is that not...
Yes, that's where the controversy is. Yes, contradictory. And I also don't agree with ASU on the issue of full autonomy. In as much as I support the government, I support ASU that money should be released for them to properly fund public university education, but I don't subscribe to autonomy at the universities. Now, take a look at the universities, the private universities that we have in this country. The lecturers there, the professors there, how does a professor and how much does he earn? Are they sustainable? Are they pay them? Now, if you go to a public university and look at the number of lecturers in the institution, and you know that when there's an autonomy, they cannot pay, they cannot fund it. So you don't ask for an autonomy when you don't have the capacity to run efficiently. As it is now, what is the essence of government? Government is for the well-being of the citizens. So if the government is funding public university education system, for the well-being of Nigeria, for the future of the university. It is so right. There is no need for autonomy in these schools. Yes, what ASU wants per se is, let us decide, let the board decide what we want and how to run the university. Fine, you run the university, but if they left the university for you alone, the school fees alone that they will charge will be very, very high, inaccessible for the poor children in this country. I don't subscribe to autonomy.
So the government has put a 1-year moratorium on registration of new universities. We have that on ground.
Yes.
But, I mean, could there be a middle ground? Can Nigeria balance expansion with improving quality that you are calling for at the same time? For the growing population, that's the argument also put out there. That for Nigeria, in fact, a professor did say very recently that Nigeria needs about 800 more universities to cater for its growing population. So can there be a balance? On the one hand, expand, or let me take that back. On the one hand, fund the one that is on ground, which is what you're calling for, and then the other hand, expand at the same time.
Especially, too, if you consider the low enrollment figures, about 875,000 enrollees now, undergraduates in Nigeria.
Yes. Now, let me respond to the low enrollment figure. It is as a result of inadequate facilities in these universities. For instance, campus accommodations, hostels, okay, lectures, theater rooms, lecture halls. You don't have enough of them. And that was the essence of that need assessment, that 2009 agreement. It was based on need assessment. A committee was set up by the government and went round to the universities, and each of them, their needs was considered and taken. And yet that was not. If that program has been running from 2009, 220 billion has been releasing as due, as agreed. By now, we shouldn't have been talking about expansion, because the existing university could have accommodated enough Nigerian citizens.
About 200 universities.
They can, if you improve the facilities there. Okay. The lectures hall. Now, if you go to some of these universities, you have students standing on the window to receive lectures. I mean, how they are, so how can you
balance?
You can't balance it. So now, if you go and create ones,
all right.
You see, the creation, the call, the agitation, or the request, you know, the appeal for the creation of the university, I believe basically is political.
All right.
And I think, yes,
that's
I think
a good place to live it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Ben Ukeji is the spokesman for Citizens for Good Governance. Thank you for being on the news tonight. We do
Thank you
appreciate
very
your
much.
time.